everyone. This is Living Consciously, and I'm Carol Carnes. Well, it would seem like being conscious is a given. After all, we're awake and we're alert and we can think. But there are levels of consciousness. Some people are not very conscious when they're driving. They're on automatic, as it were. I think we've all experienced that, of looking around and saying, oh, I never saw that before. I've had kind of an experience of that recently, since the weather here has cooled down in the mornings. I'm out walking. And the other day I decided to walk all the way into the little town of Mesilla. It's not far, maybe a mile from my place. And it's a beautiful, historic little town in southern New Mexico. They say it's where Billy the Kid was captured. But it's just beautiful. It has a Hispanic flavor to it and wonderful little shops and beautiful little places to sit and bookstores and all that sort of thing. And as I was walking, I got a phone call from my daughter, which I always take. And I sat down in a little grassy park that had a fountain that was bubbling away and realized I never really noticed that fountain before. And it's right on the main street where I drive by all the time. Now, of course, I knew it was there, but I'd never experienced it. And that means I didn't hear the water babbling, and I didn't feel the freshness of the air and the birds in the trees. And it's a whole different experience being somewhere than observing it, if you know what I mean. So I continued on to my walk, and I stopped in some shops that I had never been in because I was always just whizzing by, right? Met some wonderful people I never would have met if I hadn't been on foot. I really, really enjoyed myself. And this was kind of an example of becoming more aware by actually being in the experience of what we are doing, rather than being kind of a spectator of our own life. To think about what that means, a spectator to your own life. I think a lot of us have experienced ourselves that way, rather than actually experiencing the moment that we're in. So, lots of people in the world experience life as if there's not enough to go around. They experience life as if they are always being attacked and need to defend themselves, as if they're victims. And these come from the core beliefs they have from observing life, rather than experiencing who they really are. Now, since this is a spiritual teaching that I'm all about, I have to always take it back to that. Our core beliefs about who we are, therefore where we are and what we're dealing with, is absolutely of the utmost importance in how we experience things. Ernest Holmes, the founder of this teaching in modern times, said, "We've learned all we need to learn from suffering." And then he wrote a book called The Science of Mind. And then it's no accident why he named it that, because this is all about perception coming through our core beliefs. Our perception of who we are, what the universe is, how it functions, and our place in it is key. So if we're part of the masses who believe there's not enough to go around, we will see life that way, we will be a spectator to it that way, and we will experience life as if there's not enough to go around. And what happens then? What happens when we think there's not enough to go around is people can get really devious in getting their share. And in fact, there are whole groups of people collectively getting their share by conquering, dividing, fighting for it. This has got to stop. I look at the world and I think, man, are we unconscious? And then I look at certain groups or levels of awareness and I think, people are really waking up. I think it's a both and right now. And that, as I've said before, all the crud that's coming up, that's been wrong with our culture for a long time, is because we are no longer willing to learn from that suffering. Let me ask you this question. Don't you think you could learn more from joy than sorrow? Don't you think you could learn more from prosperity than poverty? And I say this because we've never really experienced true joy to the extent that's we're capable of, or prosperity in the sense that it's just flow. And it's not about hoarding, and it's not about having investments, and it's not about having the biggest bank account in the world. It's all flow. So this is what I call low-tech spirituality. Just like walking on foot is kind of a low-tech way to experience yourself, your surroundings, your community, the moment, Mother Nature, the sounds. You know, the other day when I was walking, I could smell the green chilies roasting from various restaurants. And this is kind of that time of the year in this part of New Mexico. It's just tantalizing, you know, and you hear things you don't hear in the car, that kind of thing. So low-tech spirituality is what New Thought is all about. You know, you don't need a lot of ritual, and you don't need beads, and you don't need shawls, and you don't need a certain place to meditate, and you don't need to chant certain things. All you need is yourself and the willingness to be with yourself for a little bit of an extended period of time, so that there is a natural kind of progression from the outer to the inner. And it is natural. The mind does love to fall into peace. It does love to go back into that space. It's kind of like sleep in a human being. I'm thinking about the attention consciousness right now. Think about how at the end of the day you've done good work, you've been busy as heck, and then you just, you know, I can't wait to go to sleep, because you know you will be energized, and the body does wonderful healing things when we sleep. Well, the mind is like that too. I think it gets tired of thinking and observing and accounting for and judging and making determinations and all that. And the mind likes to simply stop. What happens when the mind stops? Time stops, as far as we're concerned, as far as our body is concerned, as far as our experience of being is concerned. There's no time when the mind slows down. This is hugely important. I don't think there's been enough research on this yet, but it's coming. There's been a lot, but we need more on what actually happens to the body when we experience timelessness. And that can only happen when the mind stops thinking so much, when it slows down. Because you see, the mind thinking is all about progression into tomorrow, into the next moment, into the future, or even into the past. But timelessness, it's not going anywhere. The mind is just resting in its own potential. I always liken it to a drawing back of a bow with an arrow, and it's just quivering there, resting in its own potential, gathering energy for when it goes back out into the world. There's a lot of direction and a lot of purpose that comes from giving the mind a good rest. So this is so easy to do. Why do you think people avoid it, sitting in silence? Because it doesn't ask anything of us. It says just sit, close your eyes, and be there. Why is that so hard for people to do? Because, well, it's probably more complex than this, but this is the number one reason. We have been lulled into thinking. We've been taught, we've been brainwashed to think that there's more power in doing than there is in our being. You think about what that means. That we've been taught that what we do is more important than who we are, and that what we're known for doing is our identity. But it is not. Our identity has nothing to do with doing. It has only to do with being. But when we have been so convinced that doing is better than being, that's what we're going to keep doing, is doing, right? So, and this is why people are sometimes afraid of meditation, and they will put it down, they'll condemn it, they'll dismiss it, they'll trivialize it, because they're afraid of it. Imagine being afraid of being with yourself. You know, being afraid of walking rather than driving. I mean, it's just the same kind of thing. We take what's easiest and fastest and most convenient, and that's fine to a point. I mean, God, I love the conveniences in life. But when they become what defines us, our car, our phone, our modern conveniences, they just allow us to do more and do more and do more and do more and do more, but we are not happier. We are not more prosperous. We are not healthier. But we could be. We could have both and. We could have all the conveniences we could ever dream up and still be centered, stable, emotionally stable, ready to meet the doing part of the world with equanimity, with a kind of harmony and balance. Doing is more important than being is a lie. It just isn't. So what if you could turn off all your machines for one day? What would be left? Just you. Try it sometime, and don't turn your TV on in the morning. Don't turn your radio on in the car. Or try walking instead of driving, just for a day. See if you can cut yourself off from all of the machinery that we have in our life. Or half a day, whatever, but only because, not because there's something inherently wrong with them, because it gives us an opportunity to discover something about ourselves. And that is, how comfortable are we with being ourselves? And that's key. How comfortable are you with being just you? And as I said before, it doesn't take a special set of rules or devotional apparatus or a certain room or anything. It just takes us sitting down and shutting our eyes and just letting it be. It's so easy because it puts us in balance. When I think of balance, the first thing that comes to my mind, because I love ballet so much, are dancers, and especially ballet dancers. I mean, when you think about ballerinas on point, on their toes, spinning around. I mean, it's astonishing what they can do, and they make it look so effortless. That doing looks effortless. Why? How? Because of what they did before. Because what they do behind the scenes. Their training, if you will. The training gives them balance so that they can perform those great feats. I mean, leaping through the air and spinning and the leg wave. It's amazing. But they didn't just do that. They learned to do it by training. It's the same thing with being human in the world of doing, as we train ourselves at the level of being. We give ourselves the possibility of creating that deep balance between the inner and the outer. Again, I want to stress, New Thought Spirituality is not about saying the world's bad or shouldn't do that, or you shouldn't eat that, or not. No, it's none of that. It's saying it's all good, but it must be in balance, because when one takes over the other, we're out of harmony with things. So it might seem more beneficial to be out of balance on the being side than the doing, but actually that can be troublesome too. People that are so into their spiritual practice that they forget to pay the rent are not much better off than the person who's doing nothing but pursuing how to pay the rent. It has to be in balance, and that's what life is. If you look at nature, it's the inner and the outer. It's the inner becoming the outer. And it seems to do it without effort. I think on every show I do, or every talk I do around the world, I say something about watch nature. She knows what she's doing. It's a perfect example. It's a real analogy to how we could live if we would give ourselves the chance to be in that state of equilibrium. The inner becoming the outer. The inner becoming the outer. So that it's a flow, and it's more like a dance, as Rumi said. Life is more like a dance. Say, okay, I have more for you on this, and we'll talk a little bit about how to do the meditation when we come back. Right now we're taking our first break, and we have some wonderful sponsors. Thank you to our sponsors, and take a listen. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
This is a national healthcare alert from the Health Hotline. If you, a family member, or a loved one suffers from knee pain and have Medicare as your primary insurance, we've got great news. You could qualify for a pain-relieving knee brace at little or no cost to you. Get free delivery, and all the paperwork is handled by our accredited suppliers at no charge to you. We also have other pain-relieving braces available for shoulder, ankle, and your back. Call the number on your screen right now to immediately receive a pain-relieving brace at little or no cost.
Everybody wants cheap airfare, but where do you find it? You call Low Cost Airlines. They specialize in cheap flights, discount hotel rooms, cheap car rental rates, and with a best price guarantee. If you want the lowest prices on your airline tickets or other travel services, call now. That's right, call. That's the only way to get these rates. Experts are standing by 24/7 to get you the cheapest airfare and hotel rates available. So don't wait. Call now.
Friend, do you remember when it felt good to withdraw your cash from the bank to expand a business, go on vacation, or buy a new car? Well, today, withdrawing your own cash has become a very risky business. According to the secret war, banks are now required to spy on us for the government and then report any suspicious or unusual behavior. I suggest you get the secret war free. Call the number on your screen or visit online.
All right, we're back. I'm Carol Carnes, and this is Living Consciously. Actually, we're talking about consciousness today, about how easy it is to go through life in a rather unconscious manner, but also how easy it is to shift that and to become more aware and alert of our surroundings, who we are, our source, and how it all functions by means of us. Now, when I say our source, I'm talking about the presence that's behind all life. People call it God or Spirit or whatever. The older I get and the longer I'm in this teaching, which is 40 years now, I realize you don't have to give it a name. You don't have to give it form. All you need to do is feel it. There is something. Maybe someday we'll actually know what it is. We don't now. We made up stories about it to make ourselves feel good. But the truth is, you don't have to give it any kind of name or form. There is a presence. It is ever present, all the time, all of it, everywhere, all at once, right here, right now. It is behind the individual that I am. It is the universal I am that I am, okay? So how do you get to that feeling? You had it as a child. I know you did. Tiny child. How do you get it? By being, by not doing. You don't get it in the world of doing very often. Maybe when you're feeling love, but that's an inner experience. But the real sense of there's something wonderful right where I am all the time, every bit of it, and that it responds to me in some way. That's all you need to know. How do you get there? By not doing so much. You know, we talked about that in the first hour, how our world is so invested in doing. And you'll notice, if you really look around, we're not doing such a good job. There's people starving all over the place. There's violence. There's sex trafficking of children and young girls and old women even. I mean, it's awful. It's deplorable what we're doing. We're also doing some wonderful things. I'm not here to put a downer on life, but you can't ignore it. There's something going on that could be corrected, and what needs to be corrected is our perception of life. So much of what is done in the name of God is evil and violent, and that comes from not understanding who we are, but making up a story that isn't true. Okay, enough of that for now. Emerson said, "Let us unlearn the wisdom of the world." What does he mean? You know, Emerson's one of my favorite people to quote, and a deep and brilliant thinker. He wrote a series of essays, and that quote is from The Oversoul, and where he talks about how you and I are individualizations of this beautiful supreme Oversoul, this perfect intelligence that is always in harmony with itself, and which supplies consciousness. And that's what you and I are. I said that last week. We are consciousness. And so this beautiful Oversoul resides within the field of awareness that we are. And if we go there by not doing but being, sitting in silence, we can glean from that field what we need to know personally to move our life forward. And that means healing our body, healing our bank account, healing our professional life, our relationships, our world, the environment. It's all known in that field. But you can't access it if you're always looking out there. You can't access it if you're listening to what the world believes, because the world doesn't know. A lot of people know, but what you see on the news is the not knowing. It's the results of the not knowing. So he said, let us think for ourselves, from the core of our being. I love this observation from Emerson about collective thinking. He said, think about what this means. He says, we call the poet inactive because he's not a merchant or a president or a porter, which was a work in those days, in the 1800s. We call the poet inactive, or the musician, or the artist, or maybe even the mother, because they're not out there doing something we think is valuable, but what they're doing is valuable. And an expression from the true self always produces beauty, order, more love, more inclusiveness, always, guaranteed. An expression from the true self is never divisive, bigoted, racist, sexist, and it's not fearful, which causes all of those other things. So low-tech spirituality is allowing yourself to experience who you are without a lot of added on stuff you don't need. And that means just to sit and be quiet. So when we're more invested in doing than being, we become overly stimulated, overactive, overachieving. You remember that book in the 60s called What Makes Sammy Run? I always loved that title because it was a question about what makes people just keep doing this, pursuing everything and not having an inner experience of peace and happiness. It's a collective belief that there's not enough to go around and you got to go out there and get it and fight for it. However, whatever you can think of to do to get your good, this is just simply not true. What we need to do, I think it's Emerson that said that, is sit at home with ourselves. And Ernest Holmes, who the founder of this teaching in modern times, said, when you have a problem, talk to yourself. And what he meant was go within. Today's title is a walk within. And I started by sharing with you that I walked from my home to a little town nearby and had a wonderful experience of heightened awareness of place, heightened awareness of where I am. And therefore, because there was no machinery involved telling me anything, and I was just experiencing things, I had a little greater sense of who I am. You know, I am a being in this field of creative intelligence that's making things out of itself. I'm a part of nature, and my interaction with it is life, how I interact with the world. But I can only interact with the world according to how I interact with myself. I guess I'm just never going to get off this soapbox because it changed my life. When I learned to meditate, it was as if I had been asleep for 34 years. And I didn't know that, but as soon as I started regular meditation, my mind just cracked open. I just started devouring books I never would have read before. I started having lucid dreams and awarenesses, and it was just astonishing how much more I felt alive. Someone said to me when I first started meditating, you're in love. I said, yeah, I am, but not with anybody. I'm finding myself. I just can't oversell it. And so if you're not an adept meditator yet and you haven't learned how, well, you can come to see me, I'll teach you. But just take some time to be without any outer stimulation. If you can do this, And everybody can find time to do it, at least 5 minutes out of the day. You know, if you can't, you're overdoing it. You're overdoing life. You are overdoing. You can do it at lunchtime, you know, like if you have a city park near you, go have lunch in the park instead of a restaurant. Or take a walk around the block wherever you are. Instead of sitting at your desk eating, walk around the block. Go outside. Bring some flowers home and put them in your house and just sit with nothing going on and observe the beauty and the color. It's just little things like that that get you in the habit. And then your mind slowly starts to calm down a little bit. And you'll find that you're able to actually do a meditation, sitting with your eyes shut for half an hour, 20 minutes, much more easily if you've started this walk within. So that's what this teaching's all about. You know, it's practical, but it's low tech. It's ways to live your life, to unlock your true self, and to get in more of a harmonious and peaceful place to take yourself out into the world, more creative, everything. So, as I said, this is a New Thought teaching. It is available, well, now it's pretty much everywhere, but our particular corner of that little market has a piece that nobody else has, and if you want to find out what that is, come and see me on Sunday morning. We meet every Sunday morning at 10:30 at the community center in the little town of Mesilla that I spoke about. It's a lovely place. Very low-key spirituality, low-tech. Come there, no jumping up and sitting down and singing and reciting. It's just this beautiful message and a little chance to be together. Get on our website. It's on the screen, mvcsl.org. Send us a donation via PayPal. We really appreciate it. We are a nonprofit. So until we meet again, I want you to know that there is a you that is greater than any experience you've ever had of yourself. Go find it and just stay tuned in, and I'll see you soon.